Life becomes a constant search for fun, which, by the way, is a word which is totally unheard of in any other vocabulary. In 19th century Russia, they wouldn't have understood what this word means, or any civilized, serious civilization. Life is a constant search for fun, which is so empty of any serious meaning that a visitor from any 19th century country, looking at our popular television programs, amusement parks, advertisements, movies, music, and almost any aspect of our popular culture, would think he has stumbled across a land of imbeciles who have lost all contact with normal reality. We don't often take that into consideration because we are living in this society and we take it for granted. But really, some outsider comes in, and often a person just from the country of Eastern Europe comes in, where they have a very tough life, and he sees how strange this way of life is that we think is normal. Some recent observers of our contemporary life have called the young people of today the me generation. In our times, the age of narcissism, self-worship, characterized by a worship of and fascination with oneself that prevents a normal human life from developing. Others have spoken of the plastic universe or fantasy world in which so many people live today, unable to face or come to terms with the reality of the world around them or the problems within themselves. When the me generation turns to religion, which has been happening very frequently in the past several decades, it is usually to a plastic or fantasy form of religion. The religion of self-development, where the self remains the object of worship, of brainwashing and mind control, of deified gurus and swamis, of a pursuit of UFOs and extraterrestrial beings, of abnormal states and feelings. There's no need to go into all these right here. These manifestations are probably familiar to all of you in some form or other. It is important for us to realize, as we try ourselves to lead a Christian life today, that the world which has been formed by our pampered times makes demands on the soul, whether in religion or in secular life, which are what one has to call totalitarian. This is easy enough to see in the mind-bending cults that have received so much publicity in recent years, which demand total allegiance to a self-made holy man. But it is just as evident in secular life, where one is confronted not just by an individual temptation here or there, but by a constant state of temptation that attacks one, whether in the background music heard everywhere in markets and businesses, in the public signs and billboards on city streets, in the rock music which is brought everywhere by its devotees, even to forest campgrounds and trails, and in the home itself, where television often becomes the secret ruler of the household, dictating modern values, opinions, and tastes. If you have young children, you know how true this is when you've seen something on television, how difficult it is to fight against this new opinion which has been given as an authority by the television. The message of this universal temptation, which occurs in all these various forms, which attacks men today, and quite openly in the secular forms, but usually more hidden when it becomes religious, is something like the following motto: live for the present, enjoy yourself, relax, be comfortable. In fact, these very phrases become part of our everyday talk. It's quite distinct from earlier times. Behind this message is another, more sinister undertone, which is openly expressed only in the officially atheist countries, which are one step ahead of the free world in this respect. In fact, we should realize that what is happening in the world today is very similar, whether it occurs behind the Iron Curtain or in the free world. There are different varieties of it, but a very similar attack is being made to get our soul. In the communist countries, which have an official doctrine of atheism, they tell quite openly that you are to forget about God, forget about any other life but the present one, remove from your life the fear of God and reverence for holy things, regard those who still believe in God in the old-fashioned way as enemies and must be exterminated. One might take, as a symbol of our carefree, fun-loving, self-worshipping times, our American Disneyland. But if so, we should not neglect to see behind it the more sinister symbol that shows where the me generation is really heading. This symbol is what is well known in the Eastern countries under communism, the Soviet Gulag chain of concentration camps that still governs the life of nearly half the world population. Yes?
Again, what's so wrong about having fun? Not something that would be harmful to other people, or that's to say against the church views or whatever. Just just like sharing company with other people and enjoying
Yes, well, you see, we have this modern word fun for it. That's not actually fun. That's some kind of entertainment or good time, something like that. Nowadays, we have this word fun, which sort of, you can use that word, of course, in ways it's usually used. So there's also nothing wrong with it. But sort of, you can see that it has overtones of sort of fun is an empty thing. And the thing of something is totally empty, has no meaning to it, especially when it becomes involved with something which is weird or abnormal. Then it's deprived of its any kind of positive value. But of course, ordinary talking to people, having good times, going on picnics and having sort of wholesome fun, wholesome enjoyment, nothing wrong with that. It's when it becomes something empty or something weird that it's.
That's a simple question. What do you think about communicating with the grandparent?
With these, well, I've never actually seen one in operation, but I'm very suspicious myself. The parents who have seen them, of course, they can see what they're all about.
Occupying all the children's time.
Yeah, it is. There's something funny about it because
Biggest industry right now.
yeah.
Oh, but you don't have to spend all your time with one of them. You just thought they're all bad.
Well, nobody said they're all bad. They simply said one was questioning those if they're entirely good either. If they encourage people to get sort of off into a fantasy world of their own, of course, that's not good. But it's sort of symptomatic that it's a kind of enjoyment which is sort of abstract, and you just sort of sit in one place, and it's sort of not. What?
It's a fantasy.
Yeah, it involves very much this fantasy world, which is
And it's boring. Most of it's boring.
war.
Destruction.
So there are all kinds of aspects you can talk about. But it's a lot of these things you can't say are sort of entirely evil. You should absolutely forbid them. But you have to be aware of the character. And where you do allow such things like that, it has to be within certain limits. The person spends all this time in this fantasy world with all these strange games. It's obviously very wrong. It's much more wholesome to have things which actually help to exercise the body, or help you to have contact with other people, sort of more normal enjoyments, which in the 19th century were all they had. Nowadays we have these various things which either encourage fantasy, which is not very healthy, or make one sort of idle, not doing anything constructive, which actually helps one out. Now, any more questions? I think it's a very complex thing to look at this whole question, because it's not so easy that you can point at almost any one thing and say, that's wrong, get rid of it. Sometimes for your own benefit or your family's benefit, you can do it. Like some family is strong enough to throw the television out. And they have an answer to that. And the children say so-and-so is watching it. They have the answer to that. They aren't bothered by that. But it isn't necessarily a question of totally abolishing certain things. It's a question of beginning to become aware so that when these movies, for example, the television programs are mentioned, you can begin to understand what kind of thing is going on. There's some things obviously you have to forbid your children from seeing. Or if it's some kind of a thing which is uncertain, perhaps you watch it with them and then begin to explain to them what it's all about, why there are dangerous aspects. In fact, the whole process of forming an Orthodox worldview is not so that you can say, this is right, this is wrong, this kind of thing has to be thrown out, that thing has to be left. In some things you can say that, but in many things they're very complicated, and there's some even positive aspects of some things which are not entirely good. Therefore, the Orthodox worldview means you look at them from the point of view critically to take whatever is good, if there is anything good, or to reject what is evil. If there's something which is simply too evil, you simply throw the whole thing out. But you have an idea why you're doing it. It's not just a blind following. It's a rule.